They call him a space age revolutionary, a man who just doesn't know the meaning of limits.
SpaceX may be the company that builds the rocket that takes the first person to Mars.
His modest goals: to land on the moon, to colonize space, to head for Mars, and to back up our biosphere on another planet.
And that's, if I were to describe a holy grail type of objective, that would be sort of the holy grail.
Technology is all right. Extraordinary words for a very down-to-earth young man. His name is Elon Musk, and he's the small guy throwing punches at the big guys. And the picture on his wall says it all.
Lift off. Lift off. 30 minutes after the hour.
He's taking on the commercial rocket industry, and big companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin are watching him warily from their launch pads. But before aiming for Mars, he's cutting his teeth on a multi-million-dollar industry. The rocket launches that hurl fancy satellites into space with a lot of noise and at a price. Each time a satellite is launched, it can cost anything between $30 and $80 million for the trip. But then along comes a young guy, 34 to be exact, who says that the huge corporations that have such a tight grip on the launcher business are ripping off their customers. He says he can get payloads into space at a fraction of the cost. He also happens to be South African, educated at Pretoria Boys High.
But of all the schools I went to, I would say Pretoria Boys High was probably the best. And South Africa is a great country, but it's difficult to do high technology things like rockets in South Africa.
Right now, Elon's modest rocket factory in Los Angeles is front page news, with his brand new rocket Falcon 1 to be launched in a few weeks' time.
Falcon 1 is going to be the lowest cost per flight to orbit of any production rocket.
Falcon 1 is like the VW Beetle of rocket, and at a mere $15 million per liftoff, it's looking like an attractive deal.
Which means we're actually cheaper than the Chinese, cheaper than the Russians or anyone else, and we're doing it in the United States with American labor costs.
3 years ago, Elon founded SpaceX here in the aerospace hub of Southern California. The long-term promise is that space travel will become as affordable as an air ticket. He employs 140 people, no bureaucracy, no delays. You've made a fresh start, so what is it that makes your cost per pound going up there any cheaper than any of your competitors?
I think the reason it's cheaper is, first of all, we're a private entity. We have a very lean system in here, and what we've been able to do here at SpaceX is cherry pick, just the top 1 or 2%, and really give them, the capital to execute well, and a clear mission, which is low-cost, reliable access to space with no other constraints.
He may not look it, but this is one of Elon's top rocket scientists, and talent like this has helped his company achieve what was deemed impossible. They built a brand new rocket engine in only 3 years, something which traditionally would have taken up to 10.
Rocket engineering is not like ditch digging. I mean, with ditch digging, you can get 100 people and dig a ditch, all right, and you'll dig it 100 times as fast if you get 100 people versus one. With rockets, you have to solve problems of a particular level of difficulty, and so you have to have that one person who can solve the problem is worth an infinite number of people who can't.
This is the Merlin engine that will lift Falcon 1 off the launch pad. It's been designed from scratch, from the very first piece of tubing. In fact, it's one of the only new engines to come out of America in the last 25 years. Elon wasn't born when Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon. Decades later, he says that space travel is still as expensive and no more reliable than it was at the time of the moon landing.
The Eagle has landed.
It costs as much today to get to space as it did 30 years ago. We are used to things improving every year. We're used to there being a better cell phone next year than this year, a better laptop. And we're even used to some basic things like you expect more from your car in next year's model than you got in last year's model. But this is not the case in space. Reliability and cost, those are the fundamental parameters of transportation, have not improved.
And then comes Falcon 1, and other rocket might just be doomed for the trash can. The components are designed to parachute back into the ocean, to be fished out later. Unlike conventional rockets, he aims for 80% reusability. Elon has a very different management style. Bureaucracy has jetted out of the window. Jeans and trainers are the dress code. Snacks and drinks are here for the taking day and night, which comes in handy when you're working around the clock and you haven't had a holiday for 2 or 3 years.
You know, I think we hire people who like to work hard, and then I make sure that the environment is a pleasant one.
One of your guys told me a short while ago that he gets treated better here at work than he does at home. He says he gets totally spoiled.
Well, I don't know how he gets treated at home. That could be a relative thing.
Elon is a team player and his management style seems to be paying dividends. A third-party study by Futron Corporation concluded that the chances of Falcon 1 blowing up are only 2.8%, but the skeptics disagree. Some of your critics say that this is just pie in the sky, that you don't really know the challenges that you face going into space.
I think I understand most of the challenges. Although I am new to the business, my team is not. And I would say that person for person, there's never been a better rocket company in existence in history. I don't think there's ever been a group this talented in one place, in one company, developing a rocket ever.
Elon has put $100 million of his own cash on the line to break the mold of space travel. Now you may be asking, how does a nice young South African boy get his hands on that sort of startup capital? Well, the answer is at your fingertips. Elon is a dot-commer. In 1995, he enrolled in a doctorate program at Stanford University. But 2 days later, he dropped out and started a software company called Zip2. He began to build his fortune by selling his software to media companies like the New York Times.
I didn't really expect to make any money. If I could make enough to cover the rent and buy food, I thought that would be fine. As it turned out, it turned out to be quite valuable in the end. We ended up selling it for hundreds of millions of dollars.
He went on to co-found PayPal, one of the world's leading electronic payment systems. So it's a way of paying for goods on the internet.
It was a way of transferring money between one entity and another entity by specifying a unique identifier, which in this case was an email address. And then doing so securely, but at the same time making it very easy to use. We sold that to eBay for about $1.5 billion.
Fortune magazine rates him the 23rd richest man under 40 in America.
So let me step out of character for those who say it hasn't changed me at all. Yes, I mean, if you have millions of dollars, it changes your lifestyle. And anyone who says differently is just full of bullshit. Yeah, I mean, I have like this huge house in Bel Air and a McLaren and like jets and all sorts of things. It's awesome. I don't need to work from a standard of living standpoint, but I do. I work every day and the weekends, and I haven't taken a vacation for years.
As a child, Elon's teachers describe him as quiet and unassuming. He was brilliant at maths and science and in love with his computer. At age 12, he developed a Space Invaders type video game, which he sold for pocket money. But testing the brand new rocket engine is no game, and the results have been enough to convince some powerful players to back Elon's revolution.
We have at this point about 190 million in launch commitments.
His first client, the US Defense Department.
Our second launch is for the US Naval Research Laboratory. Our third launch is for the Malaysian Space Agency.
You haven't done too badly for a Pretoria High old boy.
I think we're doing quite well, given that we're simply alleging at this point that we can put something in space.
His competitors want SpaceX to fail, and Elon knows it.
I think some of them are a little edgy, yes.
Aren't you worried about them snooping around here? Because it's very sort of relaxed atmosphere.
We're not too worried about competitors snooping around. I don't think there's much they could do, even if we gave them our blueprints.
The experts say that SpaceX have got the basics right, that the chances of failure are small. But the highway to space is littered with brave attempts to build cut-price rockets that have fizzled out, along with millions of dollars. So as launch date approaches, the tension and anticipation is rising.
Definitely, I think there's going to be, a serious pucker factor on launch day.
And this is what the next few weeks are all about.
The first stage of the rocket is already on its way to our launch site. We have an island in the middle of the Pacific. It's a remote tropical island. And really in a few months we should know whether we are successful or not.
Elon is prepared to reach deeper into his pockets if the first attempt fails.
I want to be able to make sure we have enough capital to survive at least 3 consecutive failures.
Elon's motivation is very different to that of another dot-commer, Mark Shuttleworth, and his space ventures.
It's great from a personal standpoint and actually, possibly even from an inspiring the general public standpoint. But it doesn't do a great deal to advance the goal of humanity becoming a spacefaring civilization, which is what my objective is with SpaceX. So I could go to the Russians and buy a ride. I believe you have to spend something like 6 months in Russia. Now, I'd pay $20 million not to spend 6 months in Russia. And besides which, my interest is, how do we enable many other people to go to space, not necessarily me personally.
You'd think that Elon has enough on his plate, taking on the giants like Boeing and Orbital Sciences. Yet taking satellites into space isn't the limit for this rocket man. His ultimate dream is to take passengers, and not just into space, but to the moon, maybe even to Mars. Falcon 1's maiden flight will carry an interesting cargo, the ashes of 26 people for the first space burial ever.
If we can build something that's capable of taking people and equipment to Mars, such that it can serve as a transportation infrastructure for humanity becoming a multi-planet species, which I think is a very, very important objective, then I would consider the mission of SpaceX successful at that point.
2,